So this week, for the case study, I decided to do isolation and restraint. One of your most effective teachers with 16 years of experience has used unorthodox disciplinary practices to curtail misbehavior involving middle school students with disabilities. You were informed of her methods by another teacher. The teacher allegedly used isolation and restraint measures that could create safety risk for students. So the first question was, how would you respond to this development? Well, student safety is obviously a number one priority in teaching, and I would take immediate action and begin an investigation on this matter. I would respond to this development by talking to the teacher to see if the allegations were valid or not, and I think even an unplanned observation might be needed. Depending on how severe the allegations are, removal of the child who was restrained or the children who were restrained or isolated may be necessary until the investigation is complete, since restraints and isolation should never be used for disciplinary actions for children, especially children with disabilities. If these allegations are deemed to be valid, what action would I take? Again, depending on the severity of the situation, there are a few actions I would take. Initially, I would communicate what happened to the students' parents, because parents need to be promptly notified when isolation or restraint measures are used on their children. If she wasn't an experienced teacher, I would initially probably put her on a probationary period where she has to take professional development and prove that she learns all the rules and regulations for restraining and isolating certain students, as well as complying with IEPs, since isolation and restraint should never be used in a disciplinary way. Children with disabilities should not be disciplined for behavior that is associated with their known disabilities. Basically, restraint and isolation should only be used in extreme cases where self-harm or harm or others might happen. The U.S. Department of Education has developed 15 principles that stress the need to prevent the use of restraints and seclusion, and these are all supported by the All Students Safe Act that was passed in 2010. So during this time period, these rules and regulations should also be shared with other school personnel, so an incident like this won't happen again. However, it does say that the teacher has 16 years of experience. I feel that this was not an act of ignorance, and in this case, termination would be the end result because of the unsafe ways that children were treated and handled. Are disciplinary measures appropriate for the teacher? I definitely believe that disciplinary measures are appropriate for this teacher. She failed to create a safe learning environment in which all students can thrive, and since she's an experienced teacher, her failure to comply with rules and regulations regarding isolation and restraints put students not only at a physical risk but also mental risk or mental harm. And then the consequences for me and the teacher if I fail to act, well, laws were enacted so that circumstances under which isolation and restraints may occur involve maximum time periods, particular types of isolation, conditions of isolation room, supervision that must be provided during this time, and approval by school officials prior to utilizing it. In this case, the teacher's been using unorthodox disciplinary practices to deal with misbehaving students. So if I fail to act as a school official, there are definite consequences that could occur. The possibility of a parent taking legal action against the teacher, myself, and or the school is probable. Termination is also probable for me and the teacher if I do not act. And then finally, it's a student safety. So since the student safety is a top priority in the school, when actions are not taken to ensure that student safety, consequences will definitely ensue. There's the probability that the child could suffer from the abuse. They could have injury or even could cause death by the restraint itself, or mental illness afterwards, such as suicide. If I fail to act, there are definitely more consequences than just legal issues.